going on, fellas? We're going to talk about Palm's coverage. What is Palm's coverage? Where did it come from? What's its strengths? What's its weaknesses? And then later on, we're going to get into the actuals of how the coverage is run and the keys and the reads of the coverage. Okay, so let's just talk about Palm's coverage and where it came from, and just try to give a little bit of history. Well, if you are a quarters team, and a lot of teams throughout the 90s and the early 2000s based their defense in quarters, especially at the college level, okay? And you planned on stopping the run and stopping the pass. But one of the problems that you had to always think about was, well, what happens when two runs out consistently from different formations, okay? So let's just look at it from a simple one, 2x2. So if two is to run any type of quick outbreaking route, and I've had people ask me about this, how come the quarter flat defenders don't play outside leverage? Well, they have to start inside leverage really because of two reasons. The first reason is their run gap fits. Okay, so because of where they have to stand, they need to, most of the time, if not all of the time, their run gaps are inside of them. So I'm on the defensive side and I look at the run gaps going to the left here. You see how if I am number 8, right, my run fit is this way if the ball goes to the left, and it's this way if it goes to the right. But I need to be able to fit that inside run fit just in case it does go to the left, right? So when that happens, there could be a potential of a play action pass. I step up in the gap, right? And then now number 2 goes out to the flank. So that puts that guy in a very tough position to have to cover it. And from a coaching standpoint, all we really expect is a tackle, okay? We don't expect quarter flat defenders to make PBUs or interceptions, okay, on outbreaking routes of 2. So that's how we start. On the opposite side, if I was playing with the nickel and the ball was to go to the right, you see how his run fit is inside, okay? If the ball was to go to the left, potentially he can stay outside, of the ball carrier, but a lot of times he's still going to fit with inside leverage of the wide receiver. So that puts him at a disadvantage that if there was a play action, right, with the back faking to the right, that now he would be out leveraged, of course, if there was some sort of outbreaking route. And then as you see in the Madden world, just the zig route is going to pretty much eat him up all the time. So that's one example. Another example, just to think about, just to give you some more situations that happen, especially in the NFL, is if we get an empty formation, right? Empty formation, and this used to happen a lot back in, when the Patriots were running rough shot across the league. They would always just put their best players in the slot position, right? And a lot of times he'd be matched up on a linebacker. So looking at Parker right now, matched up on a linebacker. Now, the matchup isn't the problem necessarily, even though it is. It's really about that this quarter flat defender has to defend all of this space. So he always aligns inside. He has a golden rule, which I won't get into too much detail right now. But if that slot receiver does run a slant route, okay, if he tries to get inside, he's supposed to match that. That's his job, okay? So think about this. That guy is supposed to take that guy and match him, which in Madden he didn't do right there. He's supposed to match that guy, but I'll be honest with you, that's almost a really tough job to say, hey, match that guy. But, if he does run a route like this, an inside breaking and then breaking out route, go play that guy too. And by the way, that might be the best wide receiver on the team. So quarters sounds great versus all of the other routes that you might see, but it's not really that great against outbreaking routes, short outbreaking routes of 2. So here comes the need for another coverage. The other coverage originally was called 2 read or 4 read, depending on the team that you played for back in the early 2000s. Now it's called palms in most circles. And all that is an outside in read by your corner, your safety. Really, those are the 2 primary guys reading number 2. Okay. If number 2, let's say on the left side of the screen, was to work something going up the field, right? It would just turn into quarters and it would play just like quarters, just like I have programmed right now. If for some reason 2 was to run an in-breaking route, right? So we're all keying number 2. If number 2 was to work an in-breaking route, right, it would turn into quarters. It would be no problem, and we would just play it like it's regular quarters. So the one route combination that I just mentioned that there's a problem with is if 2 works out. So two working out under 10 yards would turn this coverage into a hybrid version of quarters called palms. Excuse me. So that's the beginning of the coverage. That's the advantage of running the coverage. Now, what's the disadvantage of running the coverage? Well, the disadvantage is in Madden, unfortunately, the corners don't react very quickly. So the ball is going to be caught anyway, most likely. But this year in Madden 24, I feel like the corners, as long as they get there and it's a bang bang play, they might knock the ball out with the way ball knockouts happen a lot more this year. Another bad thing, though, that can happen is that sometimes people will still throw what we call the hole shot against that coverage. Okay. Let me get an example here. And the safety has to really get over there and play this route very, very quickly. And you'll see his footwork looks a lot different than if he's playing cover two. So that's why you can't really call it just a cover two defense. It's more of a trap defense, okay? But we'll see this shot right here sometimes, and versus some bad players, that receiver will still be wide open. Now, I do believe in Madden 24, they do a better job of them as the safeties of playing flat and getting over. You see how fast that safety is getting over there? But in real life, and sometimes also in Madden, there's a little bit of hesitation, confusion, and that guy could be wide open. All right. But let's just show you again quickly on the outside left side of the screen. I throw the out route. You don't always get reactions like that from the corners, but that is one of the positive things. Also, bubble routes, right? So bubble plays are going to be popular, especially with RPOs. You would hope that this defense would stop an RPO type of scheme. It would be ideal against all the RPOs you see in Madden right now. But unfortunately, you don't get a lot of help with the RPO schemes like you would in real life, where this will almost be a no play, okay, or an interception, or at least a hard hit. All right, someone's going to throw the RPO over here. You would hope that the corner would react to that a lot faster and stay outside leverage and be the guy to stop the bubble. But unfortunately, in the Madden world, it doesn't work like that. So that's where this defense is not very consistent versus real life problems. So when would you want to use this defense? Well, if you do have a guy who's throwing a lot of out routes of two, right? They have an option. They have a guy who has like an ability those are not relative too. Also, this coverage is pretty good versus some other formations, namely cover versus 3-by-1 or versus some empty formations. Where versus a lot of empty formations, if you play quarters coverage, if you don't know, and I've talked about this plenty of years. I don't think this is a big secret, so I'm going to put this out here for everybody just to learn a little something from. But when you play quarters coverage versus an empty set, right? And number three goes vertical. If you're not using the number three receiver, he could be wide open. Okay, and that happened to work out because number two didn't go vertical on the left hand side. But if I take number two triangle here and put him on a vertical route, you know, everybody's going to be eaten up in quarters. Let me get back on this. And it would be wide open. Let me do it one more time with a better looking route. I'm actually going to keep this over route, which could get into the window, but it's not going to be good enough. And that time the linebacker did run with number three. But a lot of times as a user, you may not know to run with them. And sometimes the computer player won't do a good job either. But right now, it looks like they actually have that a little bit corrected with the user. So that's something to think about when you're playing quarters. Now, if you don't want to think about that, that's when you have the option of using palms. Okay. So if you call palms against the same type of route, all right, it will look a lot better. Let's go with palms here. All right. Because of the assignments on this play, you essentially are going to get five guys covering the five deep routes, five guys being your DB types, okay, not your linebackers. So it's going to be all of your DBs against all of go back over here, against all of these guys going deep. Your nickel's going to cover number two. So we'll talk about that in more detail when I start working on the series on the Patreon. I'm going to go through every single formation like I always do every year. make sure I give you the rules, the reads, and then we go from there. Okay. But I just wanted to give the intro of the Palm series, which again, there's a lot of formations we got to go through to find out, because a lot of them actually do convert back to quarters coverage depending on the formation. So that's the part that we got to talk about. All right. Hope everybody's having a good one. If you guys want to join the Patreon, the link's at the bottom. We'll be hitting the series up this weekend, and I think you guys will enjoy it. I'll talk to you later. Peace.